everyone, welcome to the ENBE Webinar 2020-21. This is part 3. Today we are joined by Sir Fraser Morrison, previous chairman of Morrison Construction. My name is Ben McGarity. I'm a 4th year student. I'm studying civil engineering, and yeah, I mean pretty much that's it. Today we're joined by 2 of our team members, Stefan and Jennifer. I'm going to hand you over to Stefan, who will introduce himself a bit more, and then we'll move on to Jennifer, and so on and so on.
Hello, thanks very much, Ben. Great work there. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Stefan Davies, a 3rd year civil engineer and the current president of the Edinburgh Napier Built Environment Society. I would like to say thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the stream. Please follow our page for more events and great opportunities. I'll now pass over to Jennifer, who will bring on and talk about herself and bring in our special guest for this morning.
Okay, thanks guys. Okay, so I'm Jennifer. I'm a 3rd year student doing civil engineering. I'm on the events team at the Society, and I'm very pleased to introduce our next guest today. So this week we have Sir Fraser Morrison here. He was a previous chairman of Morrison Construction. He's previously studied civil engineering and is just going to show us a different route that you can take. So yeah, introducing Sir Fraser Morrison.
Good. Thank you very much, all of you, Jennifer. And good morning. I am going to talk about my life in construction. I have a lifetime commitment to the industry. I was brought up in a construction family. My father was a small builder in the north of Scotland. I went to Edinburgh University. I graduated there in civil engineering in 1970. That's a heck of a long time ago now. I spent the following 30 years building an international construction business. And for the last 20 years, I've been an investor in engineering companies, property architecture, project management consultancy, a whole range of companies who operate globally. So over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a very quick potted history of my journey, and then go on to share with you some of the lessons I've learned, and suggest that getting the big decisions right is by a margin the best advice I can give you. Now, following my graduation, I went straight back to work in the family business. There I got some practical experience of what I learned. Moved on to learning how to run a business, and within a relatively short time I had decided that that's really what I wanted to do. Now, the early 70s was a time when oil was being discovered in the North Sea. Our location in the north of Scotland was in a boom area, so there was plenty of opportunity to grow quickly. The oil boom also brought investors interested in acquiring companies, so we actually sold a controlling interest in the business, in the family business, only 4 years after I joined it in 1974. Now, at that stage, we were turning over £1 million a year. The business operated only north of Inverness in the Highlands of Scotland. I continued to manage the business, so from the age of 26 or so, and at that time, that was when I was relatively recently married. Our son Peter was just born. I ran the company there from a base in Tain, reporting directly to our new owners. Now, because they were a public company, the discipline and the management procedures were very, very different from that of a small private company. As a small family business, the only measure of performance that we used was the level of the bank overdraft. And accounts, rather than being done monthly, were done once a year. Very big change. Now, within that public company, we continued to grow. We acquired another Scottish civil engineering business. We were repositioned within that group as a subsidiary of a very well-known English construction company called Shand. And for the following decade, we operated as a subsidiary of Shand. Now, for me, those years working with people who'd been in the construction industry all of their lives were really an invaluable learning experience. That was during my 30s, gave me the skill and the confidence to do what I've done with the rest of my life. A sharp focus on big decisions, very carefully managing our commercial interests, the importance of looking after and motivating our people and keeping a level head no matter how difficult things got. Excuse me, if I can just get my phone to switch it off. Sorry, that's it on silent. Lots of lessons during that time, and as I say, the most important learning experience of my life. During that time, we moved our headquarters first to Inverness and then on to Edinburgh as we expanded across Scotland. We diversified into housing and property development and became a very broadly based construction business. Turnover grew to 60 million. And we won bigger and bigger projects. Kyleskew and Dornoch Bridges were two landmark crossings. Both had royal openings and were widely acknowledged as engineering masterpieces. And they in fact put us on the map as a civil engineering company. Sorry, my phone rings on my computer. That's my problem. They put us on the map as a civil engineering company. Interesting that a relatively small number of projects becoming very, very well known does put you on the map. And we became one of the leading construction companies in Scotland. Now, whilst we were growing successfully in Morrison, Shand began to progressively get into some difficulty. A few of their key people retired. They basically took their eye off the ball. I was invited onto the Shand board, got to know that business very well indeed. I believed I knew how to run it successfully and made an offer to buy the Shand business together with buying back the Morrison business. So after a very tense negotiation, that offer was accepted, and we doubled our size by buying Shand, and we became a UK company. Now, that was a very major opportunity for us. So it became a major milestone in our story. Successfully managed the two businesses and went on to grow the group very quickly indeed through the 90s. It was a frantic decade when we went from strength to strength. Our turnover at that time increased to 500 million by the year 2000. We took the business public, another key milestone. We built motorways around the country, including two sections of the M74 in Scotland, a section of the M56 in Wales, and we were winning bigger and bigger projects. We played a pioneering role in leading many of the privately financed, PFI as they're called, projects. We won the first privately funded project in infrastructure in the UK and the first in education in the UK. Our biggest success in that area was the privately financed Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, which I'm sure many of you know. We also acquired a utilities company just north of London, and that's since become the UK's leading utility infrastructure business. We also moved overseas to Russia, to Azerbaijan, South Africa, Ghana, Falkland Islands. Following the Gulf War in 1991, we were the first UK company into Kuwait. And within days of the fighting ending we were helping support the reconstruction process and continued with that support for many years. In fact, I recall arriving in Kuwait a few days after the war finished to find tanks still burning. The hotel I stayed in was riddled with bullet holes. And the first priority was to put the safety procedures in place with the US Corps of Engineers to identify landmines. So at the end of the 90s, in the year 2000, we sold Morrison PLC. We were made an offer at that time that was just simply too good to turn down. And since then, we, and when I say we now, that's my son Peter and I, have invested in engineering, property, architecture, related construction services businesses. We supported a management buyout of Ramco, an Aberdeen engineering company who line pipes for the North Sea oil wells, and have subsequently sold that business. We built a portfolio of investment properties here in Scotland and have continued to redevelop residential properties. We invested in an architecture business, RMGM, operating in the UK, the Middle East, and China, and acquired a New York-based architectural firm, expanding across the Atlantic. We now have design offices around the world with a series of local partners. RMGM Designs, you'll be familiar with the Scottish Parliament. RMGM designed that. The Media Centre at the Beijing Olympics, Gazprom's headquarters in St. Petersburg, and we did the historical preservation of the Supreme Court in Washington. One of our projects in Edinburgh that you'll be familiar with is the Napier University campus at Sighthill. And just a little bit further away, the Falkirk Wheel, a design and construct project done jointly with Morrison in that case, which has been featured on Scottish banknotes. Getting back to my point about iconic projects, they're very important. During the COVID lockdown, we've taken the opportunity to establish a project management business and a management consultancy business to advise people in the construction sector, and these are now both ready to launch. Now, all of that sounds wonderful. I haven't mentioned a single problem. One success to the next, growth, rapid expansion, association with iconic projects, financial success, all of it good, but none of it was easy. There were some very dark days. There were many risks to be taken, problems to be overcome, and major bumps on the road. A very large debt wiped out a whole year's profit at one stage, I recall. At least 3 property crashes and the recessions which followed. There'll be another one about to happen. Major project losses resulting in very contentious claims. The Kyleskew Bridge was eventually an engineering triumph, but at one stage the project at a time when our annual profit was £200,000, so 10 years profit. Deals and claims involving significant amount of money where both sides felt so strongly about their opposing positions, they could only be resolved by litigation or at least the threat of court action. And that was often complicated by damning press attention stimulated by one side or the other. The acquisition of Shan that I mentioned was another huge risk. Major family downside. If it went wrong, we would have been left with nothing. And during the 2009 global financial crisis, all of RMGM's Middle East clients stopped playing, and we had a lot of them. That took a fundamental business restructuring to sort, and it took 5 years to get that done. And the business challenges associated with COVID, we're just trying to absorb. They still have to be played out. So from my perspective, over my 50 years in the industry, is that construction is a business which is full of opportunity, but it's a very tough and a very high-risk business. Problems that are inevitable. Overcoming these problems requires perseverance, sleepless nights, and an awful lot of hard work. When the going gets tough, keeping a cool head and using the analytical skills we've learned as engineers is absolutely fundamental. Taking brave, quality, carefully thought through decisions is really, really important. And my constant message to all of our people is to focus on making good, big decisions. My approach to how we run our businesses will have been described in different ways, but three fundamental elements have remained constant. I've always thought as an owner, so understanding accountability and fully appreciating what represents a success, excuse me, a successful outcome is hugely important. All of our customers are owners, so standing in their shoes has given us an invaluable perspective. And as a consequence, we only employ people and we only work with partners who think like owners. Success starts with design, whether it's an iconic bridge, the redevelopment of an old building, or developing a plan for a new business. It all starts with the quality of the concept. Designers are trained to think out of the box, and by doing so, produce inspiring ideas. These ideas need detailed analytical thinking and meticulous planning to develop them into a practical reality. And getting the right balance between inspiration and delivery is fundamental to a successful business or project. I call that creative business thinking. And thirdly, you only have to listen to an orchestra or to watch a successful sports team to understand the importance of teamwork. I have a photograph of a rowing 8 on my office, on the wall of my office, to remind me that a boat would go nowhere if the rowers were not working together. When they do, it glides through the water. So picking the right team and carefully orchestrating it is fundamental. So the third leg of my approach is to build powerful partnerships. So my journey has all been in the business of construction, and my thinking and training as an engineer, I regard as a very important contributor to how it's all turned out. Your training will have been very different from mine in many respects. As one example, I used a slide rule and logbook. Computers hadn't been invented. It's now a very, very different world, but many of the basics will not have changed. The fundamentals and importance of design, meticulous detailed analysis, careful planning, working in effective teams, etc., etc. Also, many of the skills that you will have learned are transportable to other sectors. And indeed, I was surprised when I went to a reception of former Edinburgh University engineering graduates last year, how many of them had been successful in other fields, in banking, fund management, IT specialists, many more. But interestingly, like me, like all of years later, many years later, took the importance of their engineering education to what they've achieved. So as I see it, lots of opportunity. You'll all have different skills, and there are many different paths open to you. Where to start your journey is one of those big decisions I've been referring to, and whatever path you choose, success does absolutely depend on getting those big decisions right. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm very happy to elaborate on any of the points I've made and take any questions you may have.
Okay.
Excellent. It was great again to hear just this different avenue, different path that can be taken after studying the same degree as ourselves, like civil engineering. Like from the past presentations we've had, it's always been about going on from this company, that everyone's got a set path, but of course you've managed to sort of develop this. Morrison Construction is a massive company at the moment, and it's great to hear where it's kind of built from, the foundations of where it's came from, and so on. So I do believe we have some questions already sent in, and I'll hand over to Jennifer.
Ben, can I just pick up on a point you made? You were saying that other presentations are focused on a particular path that you decide to embark on. When I started working, I would have no idea. I had no concept that my career would have ended up where it has ended up. I decided to concentrate on the business side, and my sense is that probably at today's date, you're not going to know exactly what you're particularly good at. I mean, you'll know what you've studied and what has gone well when you've been at university, but there's nothing like putting it into practice. There are people who will be fantastic at design, people who will be fantastic at solving commercial issues, people who are good selling, or whatever it happens to be. And I think it's important to get a pretty broad experience and decide what you're really good at and to focus on it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been a fascinating journey you've been on, and it's really interesting to find out how you've got to where you are, etc. So yep, just Jennifer, if you want to run the.
Yep, so we've got some questions here for you. So firstly, why did you choose to study civil engineering? Why did you decide that was the path for you?
Well, actually, it's quite an interesting story, Jennifer. I was brought up in a construction family, as I said. Went to school in Tain and just knew nothing but construction. So at 18, you make a decision, and I decided in my wisdom that I definitely wasn't going to do construction because that's what it was expected that I would do. And I decided and applied to Edinburgh University to study chemical engineering. I remember going to visit the department, and in the very first week, going around some of the labs and sort of understanding what chemical engineering was. Remember seeing a construction project through the window as I watched it, and came to the realization that what I really understood and what I really wanted to do was be in construction. So that pipe dream of doing something very different from what my family had done, I changed, and within a week I'd changed from chemical engineering to civil engineering. So that's how I got to study.
Yeah, interesting. So you just saw it and decided, yep, actually this is for me.
Exactly. I just felt comfortable. I felt out of my comfort zone in chemical engineering. So I instantly changed.
That's fair. That is very fair. Okay, so we've got a next question. So firstly, when you went to the company, how did you manage to build it up? Like, how is a company such as Morrison Construction built, and where did it all start? Where does it all start?
Are you all going to follow back on screen now? When I was early in my years in the business, as I mentioned, oil was taking off in the north of Scotland. So that was an opportunity. I mean, when we previously would have been building projects of 10 houses, it changed to building projects of 100 houses or whatever. I think you've got to work hard. You've just got to spot the opportunity and really go for it, because opportunity doesn't always come when you expect it. The oil boom, we had no control over the oil boom, but we were in the right place at the right time, so took advantage of it. It was the other example I quoted is the Shan business. When we were part of this group, decided that it wasn't really working for them. I had a sense that the ultimate owners were becoming frustrated with the business. So I took a huge risk and pitched an offer to buy the whole lot from them. Now, if they had said no at that point in time, I would probably have been out of a job. So I see it all as spotting an opening, spotting an opportunity, carefully thinking about it, and when you think you've got it right, absolutely go for it 100%.
Yeah, so it's all about trusting yourself, really, isn't it?
Well,
Trusting that you're making the right decision.
I mentioned confidence earlier, and that sort of years in
Yeah.
my 30s when I worked with a group of people I still have a high regard for. Getting the confidence to make the kind of decisions that that we made was important, and I mean, they weren't all right. I mean, as I mentioned, there were lots of problems, but as long as you get more right than you're getting wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just sorry quickly, that will be with your point at the start about everyone's coming out of uni, say we're all studying civil engineering, but some people would be better at design, sales, etc.
Exactly, whatever it is. Yeah. And
yeah.
You know, I found right through my career that eventually people do specialize. I mean, if you get someone who's particularly good at sorting out commercial issues when they crop up, you really focus their attention on that. They become specialists in that, but they don't on day one become specialists in that. You build towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've got next question here. Okay, so this comes in from Sabine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sorry if I'm not. So we have, how long were you studying the subject before applying it to practical work?
Well, I mean, the 4 years at Edinburgh University, and then straight into the family business. So I very quickly started to get practical experience. Not necessarily. I mean, in my case, I studied civil engineering. We were a building company when I went back to the business. A few years later, we bought a civil engineering company. I always say that my sort of general understanding of the business from my education as a civil engineer was hugely helpful in all of it. So I had done, clearly had learned quite a bit in a family that were in the construction business, working in the business in my summer holidays and when I could. But my formal training was just the 4 years.
Yeah. Okay. So next question. So this comes from Amirata. Again, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that. I'm sorry if I'm not. So how is money raised for projects and or find investors or contractors who want to be involved? So how did it all come together?
Amirata, I suppose our privately financed projects are a good example of it. Each of them were the product of a very carefully put together team. In that case, and I don't know whether they exist now, teams in banks. So we worked closely with a selected bank. We worked with other international contractors. Bechtel is one I recall working with on that first infrastructure project we did. So carefully putting the team right, and there is plenty of there is money around. I think getting an investor for a project. We're doing private property, private housing redevelopment in Edinburgh at the moment. It's with another contractor and with it's I forget the name of them actually, but it's a fund set up to support projects. So there are specific funds set up with the very purpose of supporting projects. So talking to banking contacts, talking to organizations who are in the business of financing. Sometimes we have to put money in ourselves. If we were doing a project, a bank would always require a certain amount of risk capital from whoever is coming up with the idea, but most of it can come from external sources.
Okay. Okay, so well, Morrison Construction had a part in Falkirk Wheel, as you mentioned. So what can you recall from this project?
I remember it well. You know, there are some projects you remember throughout your lifetime, really. The Falkirk Wheel was a Millennium project. It was funded by the Millennium Commission, whatever it's called. The client was British Waterways Board, so they got money from the Millennium Commission to develop not a wheel but a boat lift on the Forth Clyde Canal. We were invited along with when I say we, it was Morrison, were invited along with 6 other contractors to put a consortium together to bid for the design and the construction of this project. Now, it would typically, for an engineering project like this, you would go to an engineer to say, well, can we work with you and can we come up with a good design? Thinking out of the box, we went to an architect, RMJM, and together with the team at RMJM, our people and them put together the idea of a wheel. It was actually designed by the architect using Lego that one of his kids had been developing. He came up with this fantastic idea. So we ended up producing a piece of engineering designed by an architect to lift boats from one level to the other, which had the potential to become an interesting visual experience as well as doing the job. So the Falkirk Wheel is now a visitor centre. It does the job of lifting the boats from one level to the next. As I think I said earlier, it was on the Scottish banknote, and it's one of those iconic projects that association with almost lasts a lifetime. I sometimes think of it almost as compare it with the music industry. You'll find certain songs where are always associated with a particular singer. And it may be only a handful of songs that have made them very, very well known. Well, Falkirk Wheel was one of the projects which helped significantly in establishing the Morrison name and in the RMJM name.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we have a question here from David. What does it take to be a leading construction company?
Oh, David, out of nerve, I think. Things will go wrong. You've got to be able to hold it together when things do go wrong, because I mean, things could go wrong for all sorts of reasons. I mean, the weather can affect a project, a design mistake, making it very much more difficult to build. I think you need to be cautious. You need to be ambitious. I think you need to very, very carefully, coming back to the point I was making earlier, analyze using the skills we've all learned as engineers in quite a lot of detail, the background, make a brave decision, then go for it. And going for it needs a huge amount of commitment.
Definitely. Okay. So do you have any advice that you can give us for students graduating in 2021? Ben?
At 21, I've often thought how difficult it must be, having been a student this year. Jennifer, you know where we live here, out in the countryside. To have to isolate out in the countryside in Fife is very easy indeed. Having to isolate as a as a student, and I see it with my own grandchildren, is inordinately difficult. I think the most important advice I'd give to you is get on the front foot as quickly as possible, because being positive in a situation like this is hugely important. I should think that the economy will recover quite quickly. I've said to you that we have established a project management business during this period. During the last 9 months, we've done no work. We've focused our attention on bidding for projects mainly in the Middle East, because that's where we think it's all going to happen in the next year, mainly in Saudi Arabia. We've been bidding week after week after week for projects. There must be about 40 bids outstanding. None of them have moved towards getting a down payment and a contract, but we firmly believe that that will happen quite quickly. So I think there will be opportunity there. I think companies will be looking for good people, your first priority, I would suggest, having graduated, is to get yourself into a position where you can have a varied experience of the different aspects of construction, and decide quite quickly what you're good at, and where you think you want to take your career. So I think it might be a time of a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, just a quick one as well. A main discussion point that's been coming from different companies as well that we've had on with this webinar has been getting involved with summer placements during your time at uni, first, second, third, fourth year, summer placements, different events that companies are holding. And even for myself, I've been fortunate enough during my second year and third year, I worked with a project management company, Gardner and Theobald in Glasgow. And then third year, just that summer, just there, fourth year, I was working with Costain, and I was down south on the A19. We had them on a previous call just last week. So from that summer placement, it's then given me the opportunity to enter their graduate scheme, which they've offered me to join next year. So it's, as you were saying about getting on the front foot and getting involved straight away. So, and I'd say I've also been fortunate on the fact that I've had family friends within these companies, and it's sort of pushed me in a bit more. But I've still followed the same process of applying online and putting your CV in, going for your interview, etc. So yeah. Is there any more questions, Jennifer?
I believe that's all of our sent in questions, but I do have a couple.
Yeah, you're back. I know from my own experience in RMGM, we have taken interns on during summer for short periods, whenever. And that's how we spot people we want to employ with the right skills and the right attitude. So using whatever connection you have, whether it's knowing people, whether it's people you've come across, a personal introduction always helps. Jennifer, you know what that means, because you know me and I know you, and you asked me to do this. I mean, that's how the world works. So absolutely encourage summer placements, getting as much experience and as much connection with companies that you might want to work for, because clearly with your experience, Ben, having done a summer placement and having caught the attention of the people there, you've got yourself a job, and at the end of the day, skill is important. That's absolutely fundamental. But having the right attitude and having the right approach and a sort of go ahead mindset is hugely important.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, unless we have any more questions coming through,
I have a couple.
have you?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I think that's all the pre-sent in ones, but I just have a couple I want to ask. So, just some generic ones. So, what, in your opinion, would you say is the biggest project that you personally have worked on and experienced, or your favorite? What was your favorite one, maybe?
Yeah, no, of all of the projects over all of my 50 years in business, the one that stands out most, and probably the one that has done most good for us as a business, is Kyleskew Bridge. That was done in the 80s. It was an inordinately difficult engineering project. In fact, going back to my Falkirk wheel experience, it was Amirata who designed Kyleskew Bridge. They employed an architect to do the design. I don't know whether many of you know it, but it's a really elegant bridge. It was almost unbuildable. It was so complex in its construction, and that's why it cost us far more than it should have done to build it. And the client eventually paid because we convinced them that we were right. We had the whole center section was lifted up into place. There were so many moments, so many experiences. In fact, it's interesting. My kids, who are now in their 40s, often joke when I talk about a problem. I say, "It's okay, Dad. It's not as bad as Kyleskew Bridge was." They still remember it. So, there'll be projects like that. Now, that by a long way wasn't the largest one. But it was the one that sticks in my mind most as being kind of almost at the breaking point, and eventually became a huge success.
Yeah, so that actually brings me on to my next question, which, so what are some challenges that you face within the industry, and how do you find ways to overcome them?
Oh, Jennifer. I mean, it's been full of challenges. How you overcome them is by working harder than anybody else and really getting hands-on involved. I actually go back to the Kyleskew experience. We got to a stage as a business where people around the business were becoming so concerned about the losses that were being built up on this project that they were taking their eye off the ball. They were losing money on at that time to focus everybody's attention on total quality management. It was a relatively new concept at that point in time. There had been a lot of talk about it. So we got people thinking quality, thinking how we would establish Morrison as a leader in the whole quality business. And that somehow or other refocused them away from worrying about what would happen to focusing on getting their own job done. I also mentioned the Shand business, that's the English construction business that were our owners for a while, and how they got into difficulty. I didn't say a lot about it, but what happened in that particular case, that they got far too involved in the politics of running the larger group, took their eye off the ball. So I suppose the most important thing, I think, when things get difficult is to get really focused on what how you're going to move forward, and finding a way of getting people thinking positively and getting them completely focused.
Yeah, definitely. I believe that's all my questions. You've pretty much covered them all.
Yeah. No, that's been really
Yeah.
interesting to find out. Like, obviously yourself, you've got like a wealth of experience. I'm not sure, Stefan, have you got anything else you want to add?
Nothing to add at the moment. Thank you very much for joining us today, Fraser. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear about your experiences, and it's great to hear such knowledge of, like you said, 50 years, all getting shared within a 40-50 minute video. It's great to hear, and
it's definitely going to show a really good contrast between the companies we've already had on and compared to this, because all the other companies, they've been following a sort of similar pattern. It's been very much
Well, I thought it would be slightly different, and I've enjoyed doing it. It got me to sort of thinking through how I summarize everything, and it's been interesting doing it, and I hope it helps. And good luck to you all. As I say, it's and when I say luck, I mean luck. Yeah, but I always recall Gary Player quoting a phrase which I often remember. He said that I have a lot of luck, but it's funny, the harder I try, the luckier I get, or the more I practice, the luckier I get. Get on the front foot is what I would suggest is a very important message.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I think you bring your own luck. You
do. Yeah. You make it. Things will happen. Things will happen for and against you, but you just get your head down, and it's an exciting business to be part of.
Yeah, and even with all four of us on the college still studying civil engineering, all represents such a vast amount of options and opportunities, especially just now. It's going to be something that's always needed.
Yeah, so, absolutely, it's going to be something that's always needed. And as I say, I think there will be a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. All right. So
good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
much. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say a big massive thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to us. I really, really appreciate it.
Jennifer, I'm delighted to have done it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if we have any more questions from anyone in the audience just now, or if we have any more that come through later on, because this video can then be used on our social media for anyone that's missed.
All right, good.
So if there's any more questions, anyone can email them in, and I'm sure Jennifer can hand them on to Fraser.
Yeah, if that's okay.
I'd be delighted, Jennifer. Yeah, no problem at all.
Perfect. All right.
Good.
So thank you very much again for your time. Thank
you. All the best to you all. Have a nice Christmas.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks for everyone for joining. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.